Thousands of migrant children may have been sexually abused in U.S. government custody. Are Donald Trump's policies to blame, or is the problem much bigger than the White House? I'm Imran Garda, and today's newsmakers are America's child migrants. A migrant's journey from Mexico into the United States can be terrifying, especially when the person is a child. It often starts by walking thousands of kilometers with little food or water and continues by crossing the border under the cover of night, only to start another journey over large swathes of desert. Every year, U.S. border patrols capture and detain thousands of these children. And at this point, you'd assume these kids are finally in safe hands. Well, you'd be wrong, according to data released by Democratic Congressman Ted Deutch. It says there's been more than 4,500 incident reports of child sexual abuse between 2014 and 2018. Many were serious enough to be referred to the FBI. Deutch's conclusion: the country's shelters are unsafe, and migrant advocates agree. So, how did this happen? We'll have that discussion in a moment, but first, here's Haider Abbasi.
Caged and confused, these are the children of migrants locked up in the United States. They crossed the southern border alone. There are around 13,000 of them in detention centers. Dozens of them say they've been sexually abused by the people charged with caring for them. The US Health Department received more than 4,500 complaints of sexual offenses against migrant children from 2014 to 2018. The allegations include inappropriate touching, sexual relationships, and showing minors pornographic videos. The agency says most of the cases were committed by minors, but 178 complaints were made against people managing the facilities. The Department of Health says it takes the allegations seriously and says the complaints are against contractors and not staff. The children are kept in the shelters until they can be released to a family member. Most of the migrants coming to the US are from Central American countries such as Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala. They say they're escaping extreme poverty, violence, and persecution. But they haven't found a friend in the White House. President Donald Trump once had a zero-tolerance approach to immigration. This meant many migrants were separated from their children. That policy has been reversed, so children are held with their parents. But many children still haven't been reunited with their families.
My son is at a detention center in Texas. He's been detained there in a foster home for 11 months, and they've not been able to hand him over because my nephew, who lives in the US, does not have his papers in order.
Democrats have voted to issue subpoenas to any Trump officials involved in the separation policy. But allegations of migrant sexual abuse began under former President Barack Obama. So will the US government investigate these claims? And will the abusers ever be held to account? Haider Abbasi, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now from Scottsdale, Arizona is immigration lawyer and social justice activist Deirdre Aboud. And in Washington, D.C. is Jeffrey Kian-Palza. He's a legal advisor at a conservative advocacy organization called the Hispanic Leadership Council. I thank you both for joining us. Jeffrey Kian-Palza, let me begin with you. These facilities, they seem to be terrible, according to the report and the details that have come out from the congressman. Are U.S. border facility staff members preying on innocent migrant children?
Hi everyone. I saw the report, the documentation presented by the congressman last night, and some of the alleged accusations seems to be fake, but all of them has been investigated. Just to point out,
what
this
seems to be fake?
Investigation started in 2000. I have one report, for instance, where after the investigation, it ended up to being a made-up allegation. And some others were made by anonymous letters. So those allegations ended up to be fake. But this report, this investigation started in 2014. So it's years ago. It's not
okay,
recent.
But we're going to get into that. Yeah, we're going to get into, to what extent it's connected to the current border policies. But I was just interested in your immediate reaction to it. for the moment. Didra Aboud, your immediate reaction when Congressman Ted Deutch came out with those figures. By the way, we invited the Congressman Deutch onto the program. He declined. He released those figures, 4,500 complaints, Didra, spanning 2014 to 2018. When you immediately heard that, your immediate response was what?
Who are we holding accountable? Who are we hiring? Is the government having oversight of people, contractors under their control? And are we doing background checks to make sure that we don't have predators working for the government?
And your conclusion, based on what you've heard so far, is there a culture of sexually assaulting, especially young kids, at the border?
At the very least, there's a culture of not making sure that it doesn't happen under our watch.
Jeffrey?
How can you say that there is a No, I mean, you're saying that there is a culture in America to sexually assault minors.
Absolutely didn't say that.
Well, I've asked it as a question.
No, you didn't say that. You didn't say that. No.
Jeffrey, I'm asking as a question,
no,
right?
you didn't say that. You didn't say that. The gentleman.
Okay, so Jeffrey, I don't understand why it's such
What culture are you talking about?
I don't understand why it's such a joke for me to ask the question. If it was any country where there's a credible report from a sitting congressman coming out that's saying 4,500 sexual assaults in 4 years.
There is a culture in the United States of... Hey, no. You are misleading. You are misleading my word. You ask a question asking if there is a culture of child abuse in the United States. Come on.
No,
come on,
I've asked you if there's a culture of abuse of migrant children.
Don't be offended. Don't be offended.
I'm asking you the question. I'm defending it. I defend it because I believe it's a fair question. And if you feel that this thing's not worth discussing, you shouldn't have taken the invitation to come on the program. So, 154 staff.
I did.
Okay, so let me pose this to you.
I didn't know you were gonna make those kind of questions.
I'm sorry, I'm asking you the question. 154 staff on unaccompanied minor allegations of sexual assault, right? Staff, right?
Well,
so let me finish. HHS and contractors.
You didn't read the report.
On unaccompanied minors.
I think you didn't read the report.
Sexual assault.
Some of the minors.
Sexual assault per week on average over 4 years. I'm asking if that's not enough to ask the question, is there a culture of sexual abuse? What numbers do you want? 50 a week. Then I can ask if there's a culture of sexual abuse.
I have the reports. Right here in front of me.
Hey, Jeffrey, I can put my piece of paper up in front of the camera for credibility as well. It doesn't mean anything. I'm quoting you, the congressman, directly. 154 staff on unaccompanied minor allegations of sexual assault, averaging 1 per week.
No.
Is there a culture?
You are wrong. You are wrong. You didn't
it's
read
in the report. It's in the report. The congressman has said it directly in Congress. These are his exact words.
No, he did say it in Congress.
No, you're wrong.
I watched it.
He said it directly
Here
in
is the document that the congressman presented with his report. This is the report. Some of the children on the facilities are migrant children. Some of them, or most of them, are foster children.
Okay, so if they were abused, does that make it okay?
Children that were abused.
But okay, Jeffrey, why are you putting bunny ears?
According to you, are migrant workers.
But Jeffrey, why are you putting bunny ears when you say abused? What does that mean? Are you hanging a question mark over abuse? Are you suggesting that, I don't know, people are just making this up? Nobody in Congress seemed to challenge the congressman when he quoted
because you are
because
you are making a serious accusation.
I've not made an accusation. I'm asking, is there a culture of abuse based? I'm asking if there's a culture of abuse based on big numbers of abuse.
Don't mention child abuse. Don't mention child abuse. What are you talking about?
This is what the congressman is saying.
There are people jobs there. There are people.
This is what the congressman is saying. This is why we're having this discussion, Jeffrey.
154 cases were referred to the Department of Justice. And even the HHS admitted that those charges were from contractors. Therefore, ICE was not responsible. Right. ICE has repeatedly said it's not responsible for anything that happens to people under their purview. They have also admitted that they're not doing background checks, just basic background checks to make sure that they don't have any child predators in their employ or as contractors. And there have been at least 3 employees, direct employees, who had charges against them, actual charges, and we don't know what happened with the charges, whether or not they were convicted or let off, but they had actual charges. So you cannot say they did an internal investigation and found themselves innocent. That is not how accountability works in the United States.
Jeffrey, don't you want those who have done terrible things to children?
There was an internal investigation. I have the report in front of me. According to the documents I have here, and I pull out from the Congressman website, in all these cases, an investigation was performed. In all of them.
So why did the congressman have to go in front of the House Judiciary Committee? Was the congressman just bored? Was it a waste of everybody's time? If all of these are being investigated, why are we having this discussion? It's not a problem, right, Jeffrey? We can all just go home.
It's not the way you are phrasing this. It is a problem. It is a problem right now. But if you're asking for an investigation, a proper investigation was made. If the congressman and you want an more detailed investigation, yeah, we should do one. We should do one.
But when those numbers came out, Jeffrey, I'm going to ask you as directly as possible, because over the past 6 or 7 minutes, this has been nagging me. It seems as if you're not bothered by these figures. You're just shrugging your shoulders. Yeah, this is nothing. Are you not bothered by these figures?
Why are you saying that?
Because you feel like I can't even ask questions about this. So I'm asking you, are you bothered by this?
Of course I'm bothered. Are you?
Well, that's why we're covering the segment, right? Because this is alarming, and that's why we're asking the questions. What the hell is going on?
No, it is alarming, but not the way it is the way you are portraying it. And you didn't
What's your
read
problem
the
with how
facts.
I'm portraying it?
You did the details.
You want me to make it sound nicer?
You didn't read the report. I have the report in front of me. You didn't read the database.
So you believe after reading the data that it's not a big deal?
So you're upset that you don't like that he's investigating this and asking questions instead of being outraged that 154 abuse cases were referred to the Department of Justice for investigation, and that ICE has said that they're not accountable, and that ICE has said that they're not doing background checks. So you need to decide, are we having fake outrage or real outrage? Because the only outrage is that no child should ever be abused by a person carrying a United States badge of authority or under the direction of a person with United States badge of authority.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
Oh,
I agree with you. I agree with you.
Okay, so Deirdre, let me ask you about
more investigation. More investigation should be done.
Okay.
Let's do the investigation.
Deirdre, I want to ask you about something that was brought up very early on.
Detailed investigation.
Fair enough, Jeffrey. So I want to ask you, Deirdre, about something that was brought up earlier on, where Jeffrey said, well, this is not something new. And we're going to get to what extent the child separation policies of the Trump administration might be making this worse, or not, right? But Deirdre, the fact that these figures come from October 2014, it shows you that it was happening from the time of the Obama administration. What does that mean, Deirdre?
It means that we weren't having accountability in 2014. We weren't having accountability in 2015. We weren't having accountability in 2016. We weren't having accountability in 2017 or 2018. And now we're in 2019 saying that why are we responsible since we never had accountability before? It is time for the buck to stop here. It is time to say in 2019 we are going to get things done instead of saying, well, it happened before, so it's not my fault.
Jeffrey, you're right that these complaints, as they've been charted and as they've been documented, are from 2014, from the Obama administration into the Trump administration. But in 2018, there's an increase, right? There's been an increase, according to the report that you have in front of you. So with that in mind, are you a bit... hold on. With that in mind, are you a bit cautious that maybe there's a link between allegations of sexual abuse of children and the child separation policy, the zero tolerance, no tolerance child separation policy that's currently in play by the Trump administration?
My gosh. you haven't read about the child separation or the zero tolerance. The zero tolerance policy started in 2005 by during the government of George W. Bush. It continued with the President Obama.
You're telling me that,
and was ended.
We've done programs about this.
Let me finish.
Under the Trump administration, this has been increased recently.
Let me finish.
Yes.
It was ended. It was ended by this current administration. It was ended. It was ended in June 2018 by the current administration. Child separation. The child separation, or for the family separation, or whatever you want to call it.
You mean the pictures?
By the current administration.
You remember the pictures? The pictures in 2018 of children in literal kennel cages?
Are you serious? What pictures? The policy was ended by President Donald Trump in June 2018.
Their parents were not with them. And regardless, I don't care what you call it.
If you present a picture, it is fake
are
news.
Being molested by U.S. government officials or contractors, and all we want to do is talk whataboutism of what about the past administration. Fine, take the past administration to court. Hold them accountable. But in 2019, we should never say it's okay for children to be abused or to ignore investigations because it happened before.
You cannot take the past administration to court. You cannot take the past administration to court. If you wanted to take someone to court, you have to point out that child molester. Just give it a name and take him to court.
You are more interested in saying what is not the problem than what is the problem. We either have children being molested, we either have predators not being investigated, we either have predators not having background checks, basic background checks that every school system in the United States has to have.
You're doing a it is a political speech. You're not giving us facts. It is a political speech.
Abused by a government authority or anybody under their purview. Contractors or actual direct paid employees
I agree with you.
never have the ability or access to abused children. Should never be on a news program equipped about who's doing it and what's doing it, and it's not a problem because it was past administration. This is ridiculous. 2019, let's just hold people accountable today. We can talk about the past too, but we should never use the past as an excuse.
Jeffrey, final 20 seconds.
Well, if an investigation have to, in detail or in-depth investigation have to be done, let's do it. Let's press the government to do that.
Okay.
It's as simple as
okay. Well, I'm glad you both agree on that you both want investigations into allegations of child sexual abuse.
I just before going to an interview, you must read your facts.
I'm sorry. What facts did I miss? Excuse me. What? Okay. Can you let's just. I'm going to ask for an extra minute here. So again, I'm going to go back to direct verbatim testimony from the Congressman Ted Deutch, who released the figures. So 4,500 complaints of sexual abuse against detained migrant children from 2014 to 2018. Fact, said from the horse's mouth, from the congressman. You accept, right? From the congressman's mouth, 154 staff on unaccompanied minor allegations of sexual assault, which averages one sexual assault of HHS staff per week, one per week. You questioned that earlier on. I don't know what your problem is with me because you're saying get the facts. I'm quoting the facts and you don't believe them. So what's your problem with me?
I don't have any problems with you. What
okay, so I'll end the segment. Thanks,
Jeffrey.
Have with you? Thank you, Deirdre and Jeffrey. Still to come in the newsmakers, thousands of Algerians rally against another term for President Abdelaziz Bouteflika. Is he too sick to keep leading? And do athletes in headscarves violate French values? We debate whether the president pressured Decathlon into scrapping its plan to sell sports hijabs. Algerian President Abdelaziz Bouteflika suffered a stroke in 2013 and since then hasn't spoken in public. So when he announced a bid for a fifth term, protests erupted. Thousands of people have braved batons and tear gas to say the president must go. And opposition politicians agree. They've invoked a rule calling for the vacancy of the presidency and a postponement of April's elections. But the 82-year-old is promising his critics that he'll step down after one more win at the voting booth. Will such a compromise work? Melinda Nusifora reports.
Many of these protesters weren't even old enough to vote when Abdelaziz Bouteflika first came to power, but they know they want him gone. Bouteflika has won every Algerian election since 1999. For 2 decades, he's governed an oil-rich country with a declining economy and rising unemployment. And his decision to seek a 5th term has driven thousands into the streets.
We're saying this regime has to leave. We're fed up, that's all. No to the 5th term and no to this system.
We say no to the mafia and no to the thieves who control the president.
Bouteflika was once known as a peacemaker. He's credited with stabilising Algeria after a bloody civil war. Now, his critics call him the frame, because for the most part, he's only seen in photos. Bouteflika suffered a stroke in 2013 and has rarely been seen in public since.
It's time for him to leave. He's old and sick. He isn't conscious about what he's doing. It's his entourage who's ruling, not him.
His opponents say the country and its wealth are really being controlled by a powerful consortium of generals, businessmen and family members. Bouteflika didn't even personally submit his papers to run for re-election. The 82-year-old is in hospital in Switzerland being treated for an undisclosed medical condition. His campaign manager tried to appease the voters by reading out a letter from the ailing president. In it, Bouteflika offered a compromise. If he wins the April 18 vote, he says he'll stay in office for a short time and call an early election, one he won't contest.
These elections are meant to, among other things, guarantee the transition of power under peaceful conditions and in an atmosphere of freedom and transparency.
But the protesters aren't buying it.
I think they want to buy time during these elections to get more time to reorganise themselves and to establish a new system that suits them.
Polls suggest Bouteflika will win his 5th term, but these are the largest protests he's faced during his presidency, and the opposition is determined to capitalise on them. Melinda Nusifora, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now in Beirut is Dalia Ghanem. She's a scholar at the Carnegie Middle East Center and participated in the protests in Algeria last week. In New York, we have Andrew Leibovich, a visiting fellow at the European Council on Foreign Relations, and political analyst Lakhdar Ghattas joins me in the studio. He's written the book Algeria and the Cold War, International Relations and the Struggle for Autonomy. I thank you all for joining us here on the Newsmakers. Lakhdar, let me begin with you. So the opposition have been pushing for invoking Article 102, as far as I understand, where it says the president's unfit, therefore the president must vacate and elections must be nullified or cancelled or postponed. Is that the right move from the opposition right now?
Well, for the opposition in Algeria, I mean, it has been a sort of push on back. They gradually got up to this situation, to this position where they finally somehow tried to catch up with the momentum of the street and agree to invoke the 102 article. But the momentum in the street, the other non-official opposition actors that are leading the momentum in the streets is really has put the bar higher than that, and they're really looking for a genuine, real change of regime, not only to invoke that the article of the Constitution.
Right. Okay, great. So, Dalia, Bouteflika's 82. He's not well. He hasn't been well since 2013. What gives him the confidence to think that he can run again for a 5th term and call the shots?
No, it's not about having confidence. President Bouteflika has been very sick. He has been debilitated by a long-standing illness since 2013. He cannot talk, he cannot walk, let alone govern. It is deeper than that. You know, the Algerian regime is a very complex and a very opaque one. And just to summarize how it works, there are different circles that composes the Algerian regime. We have the political military elite, we have the bureaucracy, and we have the business elite. And basically all these circles they are connected by family, tribal, and regional ties. And of course, their interests are highly intertwined, and this creates interdependence between them. Of course, these relationships within these circles are not written in stone, and the allegiances are fluid, yet they are what compose the Algerian regime. And it is all those circles, all those stratas that are actually struggling to keep the statu quo and are in need to keep Bouteflika in power.
And so, Andrew, is it less about the man, but more about what the man represents with the deep state, or the power, as Algerians call it?
Well, certainly there's an aspect of Bouteflika's own revolutionary credibility, his own past. But even deep state is not necessarily the best term to use in Algeria. There is a very complicated state and a complicated arrangement of power, as Dalia so nicely highlighted. But it's not just one entity behind the scenes that controls everything. It's one of the reasons why there's been so much immobility in recent years. It's because all of these different overlapping centers of power have not been able to come up with a clear direction for the future of the country.
At the heart of it all, Lakhdar, has it been economic? That the oil and gas wealth hasn't been adequately shared, that when the Arab Spring kicked off a few years ago, Algeria was able to hand out subsidies and lower prices and so on, but they're not quite as economically strong right now as they were then?
Economy was a factor, but it is really a combination of factors. And I would argue that you have more other social and psychological and political factors underpinning the momentum and the situation. I mean, if you take, for example, the last decade of Bouteflika's reign, you've got, for example, look into the south. We had a movement that is building up of the jobless in the south, in towns like Ouargla, in Salah. You've got the momentum for the anti-shale gas protests there, and you've got the other towns that are marginalized. You've got that momentum has been building up, and you've got the ICG has written a piece 2 years ago, I think, on Algeria's south with the alarm is coming, something around like. And then you've got the politics. For some members of the Bouteflika, of this complex of the regime, it has become difficult for them to support the regime in its entirety. You've got people like Ben Bitour, Bouteflika's first prime minister, who just lasted 8 months and resigned his post in 2000. Ben Fliss himself also was his cabinet chief, and then he ran against him in 2004 and 14. These people have defected him, and by the third term they have even rose up to the position where they're saying we cannot reform this regime, and we need a real change. Ben Bitour remained solo, but Ben Fliss set up party. But you have also other movements you've got protest movements, you've got the Barakat movement, you've got movements like Rashad that have been calling for radical change in the so you've got a combination of the factors, in addition to the oil prices, of course, which contributed in the last 3 or 4 years.
Dalia, was the insult of wanting a 5th term the trigger for people? The fact that Bouteflika said the 4th term would be his last, and then here he was in a wheelchair, not well, not even in the country, saying, no, I can handle this. Was the insult the trigger?
It was. You know, I was in Algiers and I marched with the participants, with the protesters, and, you know, I marched, I observed them as a scholar, but I marched as an Algerian citizen as well. And I can tell you the general feeling was that we Algerians today, we feel ashamed we almost feel ashamed to say we are Algerian, because we are tired of being taken for granted, taken for half people, meaning un sous-peuple, and taken for half citizen, des sous-citoyens. It was the slap, it was the insult. Algerian, most of them find it outrageous and even beyond all reason to be governed by a man who hasn't been able to walk and to talk to them for the last 6 years. And more than that, it is an insult because he was the president who said that will bring change. You know, there was this famous speech of Bouteflika when he said in Arabic, "Nahna tab jinanna," which means our generation is over and we need to let the young people govern and handle politics. And yet he claimed a 4th term, and here he is claiming a 5th term.
Lakhdar, why not let him run and lose? If presumably the elections are going to be free and fair, let him run, let him lose, and let the opposition take over.
Well, just to follow up on the previous question, I was talking to a politician this morning, and he told me Bouteflika wouldn't have given us a gift more than this, that he ran like for a 5th term, like he brought those who are on the edge,
right.
Like that was like the last straw that broke it, like a gift that pushed the Algerians in the streets as we saw it. And to answer your questions, why not let him run? Because Dalia was saying he promised the same thing in 2014. He said that he will.
But if it's free and fair, he'll lose if everybody's against him, right? Or the majority?
It might be free, but not fair.
Right.
You've got a set of laws, you've got a set of circumstances and conditions that make it not fair. I mean, you've got the constitution that was, and the electoral law that was amended recently that have put hurdles in front of incredible candidates. You've got the 10 years residency in Algeria, you've got the nationality of your spouse, of your wife, you've got the a set of hurdles that were put, obstacles that were put in front. So it might be free because now Algeria is in the spotlight, but it's never been a fair one.
Okay, so let's ask Andrew. Andrew, for as long as Bouteflika wants to run, will it always be rigged in his favor?
Rigged is not necessarily the term that I would use, but yes, there are certainly numerous factors that favor Bouteflika as long as he decides to present himself, which is part of why this mobilization has continued and why this promise of the national conference, if he's elected, is not going to be enough for many people.
Yeah. So, Dalia, when he talks about needing a national conference, dialogue for a transition, why are you against that?
No, I am not against it, but I think Algerian would be against it. You know, slogans were very clear when I marched with the student on February 26th and then with everybody else on March 1st. Slogans were very clear, and the demands for now are very clear. We do not want a 5th term. We do not want Bouteflika, neither his brothers, and we do not want all the people who has been within this system for 20 years. So a national dialogue is not going to solve the problem. What Algerians want is first to get rid of the Bouteflika clan and the supporters, and then have a free election. I would like to insist on one thing, which is the peaceful nature of this mobilization that has been really amazing to see. You know, I think Algerians gave a beautiful lesson of pacifism to the world. You know, when they marched, each time they met police barricades of the CRS, they chanted Silmiya, Silmiya, which means peaceful, peaceful. They also chanted Sha'b ou police, Khawa, Khawa, which means the people and the police are brothers. And they also chanted Ya la police ma dirish al-aib, which means all police do not shame yourself. I think I was surprised by how civilized they were and how experienced they were. Yeah. Algerians have the experience of the Black Decade and of the violence of the Black Decade. So they don't want to read it, if I may say. They don't want to replicate what happened in the 90s. And this is why they don't want violence. And I think it is very important to insist on that, because until now, the protest has been very peaceful, and hopefully they will remain peaceful. And I think if the protests remain peaceful, the mobilization will get broader because they will convince more people to join the movement. And if these protests remain peaceful but also the demand clear, we might see these protests mutate into something else, which is a successful social movement.
Right. Yeah. Protests have been peaceful, and unlike what we saw elsewhere in the region between 2011 and 2013, no major crackdown, thankfully. People are protesting. We're having this discussion about the politics and the optics, not about dead bodies, which is fantastic, and long may that continue. Lakhtar, a lot of people looking back at the Arab Spring, which Algeria was not considered a part of for the aforementioned reasons. People find a comparison between Bouteflika and Ben Ali of Tunisia. Is that accurate? Is that fair?
In terms of how the regime is set up, it's a bit different. You've got, as Dalia was saying, you've got a set of complex actor circles in the regime, whereas in Tunisia you've got a family rule. In fact, basically by the end of the Ben Ali's days. But looking at Algeria and the 90s. I think that the bloody decade, Algerians are beyond that. Not only the memory of the 90s, if you look to the average age of those who are in the streets now, in fact, they haven't lived that period. But as I said, over the last decade, the youth have been schooled into non-violent strategy. They've seen the fruits it's brought into the shale gas protests, where they put the regime under the spotlight. When you have the Financial Times writing over weeks pieces about Ain Saleh and how the protesters managed to put to at least delay the plans of the government into starting so there have been pedagogic work that have been giving its fruits in the non-violent strategy in Algeria that is underpinning that. Also those leaders, those who are in those movements, be it in the south, be it in the jobless committees in the south, be it in the shale gas, be it in the other parts in the north of Algeria, those are now on social media, and those who are leading and organizing the groups. If you look to the Facebook right now, you've got those ones, they are those who are leading the organization of this momentum, and also we are saying that segments of society are joining. Today we've got faculty, professors in Stif, in Bab Zouar, in Wargla, they've joined in. You've got defections into the regime.
Would you call it a revolution then?
It's building up. It's building up towards that. The scenarios, how this is going to play out, I see it. You've got 3 acts, 3 rounds, if you'd like. We've got right now up to the election day. The regime right now is helping to get to the election day, and then it will say that elections were held, and then they will have like you see the letter. They're like as if they are begging, let us just do the election, and they will just stay for 1 hour. So you've got one year, and then you will have new constitution. So we've got this round 1 for the regime to get to the election day, but we've got the protests that are trying. Segments of society are joining in, trying to. Election day will be none. If it comes, there will be a boycott. We have already people are organizing for this online and on the ground. There will be the second round on the election day. There will be boycotts of people who will stay at home. And then you've got a round 3, which is if this regime doesn't back down and really tries to push ahead with its plans, then you will see a massive conversion of all the segments of society. We will already have defections in key actors like the patronal, like the labor, the business community that are defecting.
Okay. Just before we wrap up, 2 final short final comments from Andrew and Dalia. Andrew, let me start with you. Has Bouteflika tarnished his revolutionary credentials, his peacemaking credentials, helping to end the civil war by continuing to stay on right now? Has he trashed his legacy?
I think there has been a change in his legacy, but it's also that I want to go back to one of the points that Lakhtar was making and pick it up a bit from there. Algerians want the state that was promised to them. Mm-hmm. They want the state that they've been told they live in, and they want to see that become a reality. So I don't know if revolution is the right term, but they're looking for the state to fulfill its promise to them and to fulfill what they think Algeria can be and should be. The country that people see and that they want to actually live in. That's what I think is happening in large part right now.
Right. Dalia, has Bouteflika let you down, and has he let down his own legacy?
Well, you know, unfortunately, where the answer is yes, you know, he has been, but you know, Algerians are really cognizant of that. When I spoke to them during the demonstration, they almost felt pity for the man because they had this great image of him being the architect of peace, the man and the president who brought back peace in Algeria, who brought back Algeria on the international scene, and all of them seemed to say the same thing, kind of ya khsara, c'est dommage. It's a pity that he didn't know where to stop. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, this is the image that his people will keep about him. He sullied, between quotes, his image by himself and by the greed of his brothers and his clan to cling into power.
Well, really good to get a deeper understanding of what's going on right now in the politics, in the corridors of power, and on the streets of Algeria. Dalia, Andrew, and Lakhtar, I thank you all for joining us here on the Newsmakers.
It's a vision of women that I don't share. If we want equality between men and women, we can't accept women covering up. I think it's contrary to the values of our country.
Well, those kinds of sentiments have convinced French sports retailer Decathlon to suspend plans to sell a range of Islamic headscarves for athletes. President Emmanuel Macron's centrist party threatened to boycott the brand, saying hijabs in sport contradict the country's secular values. Decathlon says it withdrew the product after receiving a wave of threats and insults online, but others say the company bowed to political pressure. Well, to discuss this, we're joined from Dubai by professional runner and activist Manal Rostrom, who appears in Nike's Hijab Survivor campaign. And in Abbeville, France, is Patricia Chagnon. She's a member of Marine Le Pen's National Rally political party. I thank you both for joining us here on the Newsmakers. Patricia, let me start with you. Do you believe that Decathlon made the right decision?
Decathlon was forced into this decision. There was a huge public outcry when it was announced that they were going to put these sport hijab on the market. Decathlon was only out there to make a profit, and Decathlon has no social scruples whatsoever. And yes, there was a huge outcry from the people, but also from our politicians, to immediately withdraw this from the shelves because the hijab has no place in French society.
Manal, Patricia says hijab has no place in French society. Decathlon made the right decision. How do you feel about that?
I don't know. Like, first of all, I just want to leave, you know, like, I want to differentiate between sports and politics. I think we should leave sports and like, leave sports out of politics, basically. And I think for a brand to come out and, you know, publicly announce that they are not advocating the, you know, Muslim women in sports, it's a big thing. And I don't know, like, for me, I was shocked, to be honest, you know, as a Muslim female athlete who chooses to cover. I think it was just very, like, strange. And I'm leaving politics. I'm not French. I don't live in France. But I mean, in a time where all brands are jumping on the opportunity to, you know, like, advocate inclusivity, tolerance, peace, and kindness, this brand comes out and does this. It was like a little bit of a shocker, to be honest.
Yeah, so Patricia, what's the problem with it? Is it the fact that it's a French brand? Because Nike sells a similar running hijab and other hijab customized sports gear in Paris, and people have no problem with that. So was it because Decathlon's a French brand and you feel somehow it's insulting your society?
We need to put the putting on the market of this sport hijab in its context by Decathlon. It was just after many anti-Semitic acts were committed in France. Many churches were destroyed, and I think it was just...
What does a woman wearing a headscarf while running have anything to do with a Jew being attacked for being a Jew?
Well, because we live in a secular society, and there has been so much aggression against Jewish people in our society and against Catholic churches that I think the French population is crying out to have our secular rules reapplied in our society.
Are you happy with a clear link being made between Muslim women who want to go for a run and people being attacked for being Jewish, by making that association that these women are responsible for that?
Of course not. No.
You just said it.
Not.
That's what I'm saying. You're saying we need to put it in that context.
Listen, I didn't say that at all. I said you have to put it in the context of events taking place in society, which makes French people really want to go back to our secular society, where any demonstration of religion in the public place
but Patricia, I've spoken I've spoken to a bunch of National Front members, right? Especially when I was in France. A lot of the views of Muslim women are that these people don't want to integrate into our society. They live in their ghettos. They don't want to be a part of our society. They have a different culture, a different way of life. But if you're a Muslim woman, you want to go for a run or you want to go to the beach, then you're told, oh, no, you don't dress appropriately, and therefore what you're wearing isn't integrated with French values. So please don't play this game with us. Don't be a part of our society. Can you see how it's constant barriers coming down for them?
No. I suppose you want my reaction to what you're just insinuating. You've got to again look at the context of things. 15 years ago, we had no demonstration of Muslim garments in the streets as we have today. We had no requests for separate swimming hours for boys and girls in schools. We didn't see little girls dressed up in the streets, little 10, 11-year-olds all covered up. We had no demands in public in school canteens for special halal meals for Muslim children. We've always been a society, a secular society, accepting everybody into our society under the condition that we accept that religion should not be brought into the public place. So I don't think there is anything wrong with Muslim women wanting to wear hijab or Muslim garments in Muslim countries. That's their choice. However, I would like to say that, for example, in Iran, we are seeing women who are going outside without headscarves.
And so listen, but Patricia, listen, you know what we do is we have segments where we have people defending the imposition of hijab in Iran, and we have people opposing that, and we debate it, right? So I don't want to actually talk about Iran and other Muslim majority countries where it's not a choice, right? And you can't really take off your hijab, because we have those debates, right? So that comparison, for the sake of this debate, can I park that off? Can you accept that I park that off? Because we have that discussion, right?
No, because I think it's important to put that.
But those French Muslim women don't live in Iran.
Can I please answer?
Sure, but they don't live in Iran, so you saying Iran doesn't mean anything.
Listen, if you stop interrupting me, maybe you can actually listen to my answer. The point that I'm trying to make is we did not have this type of very conservative attitude towards religion in France. We've always had Muslim women, and in the past this was never an issue. It's only been an issue recently in French society because of a very traditional view of Islam taking over. Right. And while women in other countries are combating this and want to be moderate Muslim women, we see in France that the more traditional view is taking over. And it's actually very problematic with moderate Muslim women in our society.
But again, Patricia, you're deciding who's a moderate and who's not, right? Because we could have a whole debate about who goes out for a run in hijab. Some traditional or conservative Muslims would consider that to be too liberal, right? But let me bring in Manal here. Manal, you've heard Patricia. You've heard Patricia.
We're in France. We're in France. So yes, we live in France.
But again, you're deciding what's moderate. You're deciding what's moderate and what's not, right, Patricia? That's on you.
I'm not.
You've decided. You said don't wear hijab. That's moderate. Wear hijab, and that's not moderate, right? Manal.
No, I'm not saying that, and I refuse the type of interview you're holding, because I'm only saying that we see in the world today, in my country today, we see a very different situation than 15 years ago.
Okay.
And in other
so you've said that 3 times. Let me ask Manal. Manal, do you accept that French context that Patricia is bringing up by saying that there is an increase in a sense of hostility in the culture wars between Muslims who are living in France and others in French society as defined by Patricia? And with that in mind, what Decathlon has done has rubbed people up the wrong way. Do you accept that in any way, shape or form?
Okay, I just want to briefly comment. First of all, you know, I respect Patricia's views so much, especially that she's a native. And, you know, she's got every right to protect her country based on her, you know, beliefs that she grew up with. But whether or not people were, you know, covering up 15 years ago, or it's more like of a prominent sort of scene nowadays, I don't know about this. Like, I mean, my mom covered up when she was around 45, 47 years old. I covered up when I was 21. So the days have changed. So for a global brand to come up and upfront say that, you know, they no more or no longer support Muslim women, this is a big deal for the brand. What are you trying to say? So basically your values as a brand are no longer aligned with mine. So as a consumer, then I have the right to boycott you as a brand.
Listen, it's been interesting to delve into this a little bit with the French context. Looking forward to having more discussions with both of you in the future. Patricia Chagnon and Manal Rostrom, thanks for joining us. That's all for this edition of The Newsmakers with me, Imran Garta. Check out more of our stories on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. Remember to like, follow and subscribe. Next time, Venezuela's opposition leader Juan Guaido returns to Caracas after defying a travel ban. Will the self-declared president be arrested? Until then, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.